Welcome back to the channel, everybody. If you saved up $10,000 in your 20s, first off, congratulations. That already puts you ahead of a huge chunk of people your age. But here's the real question. What do you actually do with it? Because I've seen people take that same $10,000 and completely change the trajectory of their finances for the next 20 years. And I've seen other people blow through it in 6 months and have absolutely nothing to show for it. So in today's video, we're going to break down the tier list of the best things you can do with $10,000 in your 20s, ranked from the moves that are almost automatic no-brainers all the way down to the ones you should only touch with money you can genuinely afford to lose. And honestly, stick around for the back half of this list because there's a couple in there that completely surprised me when I first saw people doing them with their own $10,000. So let's go ahead, let's hop into the video. First up on the list here is building a fully funded emergency fund. And I know this one sounds boring, right? Like nobody dreams of parking their money in a savings account. But before you do anything else with this $10,000, you need 3 to 6 months of expenses, sitting somewhere safe and liquid, ideally in a high-yield savings account, earning some interest, instead of sitting in a checking account doing nothing. If you're not sure how much you actually spend each month, pull up your last 3 bank statements and average it out. That number is your baseline for how big this fund needs to be. And the reason this comes first is because without this cushion, one car repair, one medical bill, one layoff, and you're suddenly pulling from investments at the worst possible time, or going into debt to cover it. I've watched people skip this step because they wanted to jump straight into investing, and then the second life throws them a curveball. They're forced to sell everything they just built, sometimes at a loss. A common mistake here is going the opposite direction too, throwing this money into the stock market because you don't want it just sitting there. Don't do that either. This fund is supposed to be boring, and boring is exactly the point because the day you actually need it is not the day you want to be worrying about whether the market happens to be down. Next up is paying off high interest debt, specifically credit cards. And look, if you're sitting on a credit card balance at 25% interest, no investment you're going to find is reliably going to beat that. So mathematically, paying that off is the highest guaranteed return you can get with your money. A lot of people want to skip this step because paying off debt doesn't feel as fun as watching a stock portfolio grow. But every month you carry that balance, you're handing the credit card company more money than you'd ever make chasing some hot stock tip. I mean, think about it this way. If you're carrying balances across multiple cards, tackle the highest interest rate first. Not necessarily the smallest balance, because the interest is what's actually costing you the most money every single month. And here's the mistake I see a lot. People paying the minimum on their cards while still investing extra money elsewhere, thinking they're being smart by diversifying. You're not diversifying, you're just guaranteeing yourself a loss. So if any part of your $10,000 could go toward wiping out high interest debt, that needs to happen before you do literally anything else on this list. Next up is opening or maxing out a Roth IRA. And if you're in your 20s, this is honestly one of the most underrated moves you can make with extra cash. You contribute money that's already been taxed, it grows completely tax-free, and you don't pay a dime in taxes when you pull it out in retirement. Someone who puts $6,000 or $7,000 a year into a Roth IRA starting at 25 is going to end up with an absolutely massive tax-free nest egg by the time they retire, just from decades of compounding. Quick note, there are income limits on who can contribute directly. So if you're already making great money, you'll want to look into what's called a backdoor Roth. But for most people in their early to mid-20s, you can open one directly, pick a simple target date or index fund inside of it, and just let it run for the next 30 or 40 years. And don't overthink the investment choices inside the account either. A simple low-cost index fund will outperform most people trying to pick individual winners, especially over multiple decades. So if you haven't opened one yet, this is one of the best uses of that $10,000 you're going to find on this entire list. Next up is investing in a taxable brokerage account, specifically into diversified index funds like the S&P 500. Once your retirement accounts are taken care of, this is where extra money should start going to actually work for you instead of sitting there. And the beauty of this is you're not trying to pick the next big winning stock, you're just buying a small piece of hundreds of the biggest companies in the country and letting time do the heavy lifting. Historically, the market has returned around 10% a year on average over the long run, and that kind of growth on $10,000 left alone for 30 years turns into a genuinely life-changing number. And remember, this account has no contribution limits and no penalties for withdrawing early, so it gives you flexibility that your retirement accounts simply don't have. The mistake to avoid here is trying to time your entry, waiting for the market to dip before you put your money in. You're much better off splitting this into a few chunks and investing over a couple months than sitting in cash for a year trying to predict the perfect moment, because that perfect moment almost never actually shows up. Next up is making sure you're getting your full employer 401k match. And I bring this up because if your company offers to match your contributions and you're not taking full advantage of it, you are quite literally leaving free money on the table. So before you put extra cash anywhere else, check what your employer offers and make sure you're contributing enough to get every single dollar of that match. It's an instant 100% return on your money before it's even invested, And there's nothing else on this entire list that comes close to that. I've talked to people who went years contributing zero to their 401k because they assumed they couldn't afford it, only to find out their company would have matched 50 cents or even a full dollar for every dollar they put in. And if your employer doesn't offer a match at all, that's actually a good reason to prioritize the Roth IRA and brokerage account a little higher, since you're not leaving free money behind either way. Go check your benefits portal, because this is one of those things that's genuinely easy to fix once you know it's happening. All right, so those four right there, the emergency fund, the debt payoff, the Roth IRA, and the employer match, those are the ones I really don't think you should skip no matter what your situation looks like. From here on out, it starts getting a little more personal to your goals, and honestly, some of the next few are going to spark some debate in the comments. So let me know where you land. Next up is investing in yourself, whether that's a certification, a course, or a skill that directly increases your earning potential. And this one gets overlooked a lot because people assume the $10,000 needs to go straight into the stock market to count as a smart move. But if spending $1,000 or $2,000 on a certification gets you a promotion or a higher paying job, that's a return most investments could never touch. The trick is being specific about it. Don't just take a random course because it's trending online. Look at job postings in the field you actually want to move into and see what certifications or skills keep showing up. And don't just take my word for it either. Reach out to a couple people already working in that field and ask them directly what actually moved the needle for their career. That way the money you spend is tied directly to something measurable, like a raise or a new job offer, instead of just a certificate sitting in a folder somewhere. Next up is using a portion of this money to start or seed a small side business. And I'm not talking about quitting your job and going all in. I'm talking about testing something small. Whether it's an online store, a service business, or something you can build in your free time. A lot of people wait until they feel like they have enough money or enough time to start, and that day just never really comes. Having a few $1,000s set aside to actually test an idea, buy some basic equipment, or run some initial marketing gives you a real shot at seeing if something works without betting your entire financial future on it. And keep your day job while you're doing this. You know, the goal in your 20s is testing ideas with a safety net, not betting your entire income on something unproven. A mistake to avoid here is spending the whole amount before you've even validated that anyone wants what you're building. Start smaller than you think you need to, get some real feedback, and only scale up your spending once you've seen some proof the idea has legs. Next up is starting or adding to a house down payment fund. And I know owning a home isn't the right move for everyone, and I'm not saying you need to rush into it. But if it's something you actually want down the line, your 20s are a great time to start chipping away at that down payment. The earlier you start setting money aside specifically for this, the less pressure you'll feel later, trying to save a huge amount all at once while juggling other expenses. And don't feel pressured by a specific timeline either. Some people buy at 24, some buy at 34, and both can be the right decision depending on your situation. Keep in mind, this money generally shouldn't be sitting in the stock market if you're planning to use it within the next few years, because you don't want your down payment cut in half by a downturn right before you're ready to buy. Keep it simple, keep it safe, and let it build steadily in something like a high-yield savings account. Now this next one, I already know it's going to get some heated comments either way, but here it is. Next up is putting a small percentage, and I really do mean small, into higher risk assets like individual stocks or crypto. And I bring this up because I know a lot of you are going to want to do this anyway, so I'd rather you do it the smart way. Something like 5 to 10% of your investable money is a reasonable amount to put toward higher risk bets without putting your actual financial future in danger. The mistake people make is going all in on one stock or one coin because they saw it mentioned online, and then when it crashes, it takes their emergency fund and their retirement plans down with it. Be honest with yourself about why you're buying it, right? If it's because of a genuine long-term thesis, that's one thing. If it's because of a video you saw an hour ago, that's a red flag. I'd also add, don't check this part of your portfolio every single day. The whole point of it being a small percentage is so the swings don't actually affect your life. But if you're refreshing the price every hour, you're going to feel those swings anyway, even if the dollar amount barely matters. Next up is adding some bonds or more stable assets into the mix, especially once your portfolio starts getting bigger. Now in your 20s, you don't need a ton of this because you have decades of time to ride out the ups and downs of the stock market. But having a small allocation toward bonds or more stable investments can smooth things out and give you a bit of a cushion during market downturns. There are also simple bond index funds that do this diversification for you automatically. So you don't need to be picking individual bonds to get the benefit. A simple way to think about it is your bond allocation can roughly match your age as a percentage. So in your 20s, that might only be 10 to 20% of your total portfolio. It's not something you need to overthink this early, just something worth having on your radar as your account grows. Next up is investing in the right tools or equipment for your career or business. So if a better laptop, camera, software subscription, or piece of equipment is the difference between doing your job or your side hustle at a mediocre level versus a genuinely competitive level. That's a purchase worth making. A lot of people try to save money by cutting corners on the tools they actually work with every day, and it ends up costing them opportunities down the line. The test I'd use here is simple. Ask yourself if the upgrade actually removes a real bottleneck in your work, or if you're just telling yourself that to justify a purchase you already wanted. And remember, you can usually start with a cheaper version and upgrade later. Once you've actually proven the investment pays off, you don't need to buy the top-of-the-line model on day one. If it's a genuine bottleneck, spend the money without guilt. If it's not, that money's probably better off in one of the earlier tiers. Next up is making sure you have the right insurance in place, whether that's health insurance, renter's insurance, or term life insurance if anyone depends on your income. And this one doesn't feel like a fun use of money at all, but the entire point of insurance is protecting everything else you've just built on this list. One bad accident or one uncovered emergency can wipe out years of saving and investing if you're not properly covered. A lot of people in their 20s assume they're invincible, so they skip this entirely or go with the bare minimum just to check a box. And if you're not sure where to start, a quick conversation with an independent insurance agent, one who isn't just trying to sell you their own products, can help you figure out exactly what gaps you actually have. Take an afternoon, actually read through what you have, and close any obvious gaps, because insurance is one of those things you never think about until the exact moment you desperately need it. Next up is spending some of this money on travel or experiences, but doing it intentionally. And I know that sounds like it contradicts a lot of what I just said, but your 20s are genuinely one of the best times in your life to travel, whether it's for fun, for networking, or just for the experience of seeing more of the world before responsibilities like a mortgage or kids make it harder. The key word here is intentional. Set a specific budget before you book anything, rather than just spending as you go and hoping it works out. Consider timing your trips around off-peak seasons, or using points and miles if you travel often. Small adjustments like that can stretch this part of your budget significantly further, and that way you get the experience without it quietly eating into the money you've earmarked for everything else on this list. Next up is using some of this money, or honestly just some of your time, to actually build a real budgeting system. And I bring this up because I've seen people invest and save perfectly for a year and then have no idea where the rest of their money is going every single month. It doesn't need to be complicated. Even a simple spreadsheet or a free app that tracks your spending automatically is enough to start. Even just 15 minutes a week reviewing where your money went is usually enough to catch problems early. You don't need to obsess over every single transaction. The goal isn't to restrict every purchase you make, it's to actually know where the money's going, so you can make adjustments before small leaks turn into a real problem. Without this, it's incredibly easy for lifestyle creep to quietly eat away at all the progress you're making. And now, the very last one, the one I told you about at the beginning of this video. Last on the list here is using a small piece of this to help family or invest in the relationships around you. Now, I'm not saying go give away thousands of dollars, but if a portion of this money helping out a parent, contributing to a family emergency, or just being generous with people who matter to you brings real value to your life, that's worth factoring in too. Just be thoughtful about how you do this, setting clear expectations rather than just handing money over without a plan. Because generosity without any structure can sometimes create more stress than it solves. And remember, the goal isn't to overextend yourself either. You can't actually help anyone long term if doing so puts your own financial foundation at risk. Money isn't just a spreadsheet, and building wealth for its own sake without ever using some of it to strengthen the relationships around you can leave you financially secure, but genuinely isolated. So that's my tier list for the best things you can do with $10,000 in your 20s. And if you want the quick recap, the S tier moves are your emergency fund, your high interest debt, your Roth IRA, and your employer match. Those come first, no matter what. Everything else on this list is really about how you want to balance growth, risk, and actually enjoying your life along the way. Let me know in the comments what you'd add, what you disagree with, or what you actually did with your first $10,000 saved up. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you.